up guys, Heat King here, bringing you another video on my Resident Evil retrospect. It's been a while. You've probably noticed the various videos I posted were all done on the same day. This is a new one. This is a different day. It's been a few weeks actually. I've been recovering from a flu, so I'm still recovering, but I'm getting better there. Yay! Yeah, so today's discussion, just a clarification, I did post a video up discussing Vendetta, but unfortunately I couldn't keep it up because it was copyright claimed. That's what I get for putting the trailer in there, so I had to delete it and I don't have the footage anymore, so that's a shame. But yeah, we're getting close to the release date now, guys. We're getting close now. Today's Thursday, so yeah, we've only got like a few more days left. So yeah, today's video I will be discussing the canon games. Basically, what are the canon materials in the Resident Evil video game franchise and what is not canon, and discussing why it's not canon. So hopefully I can keep this video short and sweet and not make it too overly long. So let's just get right into it then. So in chronological order, we have Resident Evil 0, we have Resident Evil 1 and remake, we have Resident Evil 2 / remake, which we'll be getting very soon, hopefully by next year, Resident Evil 3 / remake. Ooh, what do I mean by that? Ooh, is there a remake for Resident Evil 3 coming out? That hasn't been announced or confirmed. Maybe it has. I'll be discussing that later on in another video. But, yeah, I'm just putting it in there for now. And then we have Resident Evil Code Veronica X. Okay, Code Veronica X. The PS2 version is the canon version of the game, not the Dreamcast or the GameCube. Code Veronica X is the canon one, because that's got more extended story elements in it that you know, continue off and that. So, yeah. So those first 5 games are pretty much what a lot of fans, myself included, would consider the survival horror or the classical games. Those are the ones that kept the identity of the survival horror elements and the roots. So yeah, that's what those 5 games comprise. In between that, we then have the games that sort of take place between the classical era of the Resident Evil games and the survival action era of the Resident Evil games. These 2 games are Umbrella Chronicles and Darkside Chronicles, and they were both exclusively released on the Wii, I believe, and they are all ported to the PS3 and maybe 360. Don't remember. I did play the PS3 ports, which I downloaded. So, but yeah, obviously only certain elements of those 2 games are canon. Mainly the side stories featuring characters like Ada and Richard and Wesker's exclusive levels, and the exclusive level Fall of Umbrella, which stars Chris and Jill, you know, pretty much putting a stop to Umbrella and its experiments. And then with Darkside Chronicles, which is kind of like a retelling adaptation of Resident Evil 2 and Code Veronica, along with its own exclusive main canon storyline, Operation Javier, which stars Leon and Krauser when they first meet up, and you know, their battle against this new version of the T Veronica virus. So yeah, that's those 2 are basically what I mean by canon. You then have the survival action / dramatic horror saga or set of games, which take place from Resident Evil 4. I also forgot to mention, there's also CGI movies and mangas that are canon to this overall story plot line, and I think even a stage play. But yeah, if we have to include those, then it would go basically Resident Evil 4, Resident Evil Degeneration, the CGI movie, by the way. And then I think next one would be Resident Evil Revelations 1. Then it would be Resident Evil 5, Lost in Nightmares, the DLC scenario, and then Resident Evil 5 main game along with Desperate Escape scenario implanted in there. And then it would be Resident Evil Revelations 2. After that it would be Resident Evil Damnation, again the second CGI movie, followed by the manga which stars Chris and Piers, Mariana Desire, I think, and then Resident Evil 6. And all of those products pretty much compose of, oh, I nearly forgot, Resident Evil the Stage Play, which is also a prequel that's set, I think, before the events of the Mariara Desire, before the events of the manga, I think, or in between. So yeah, there's also that, Resident Evil the Stage Play. Yeah, so yeah, you got all of that story elements, so those are the canon ones as well. And then now, recently, obviously, we're returning back to the roots, sort of. We're returning to the horror survival roots with Resident Evil 7. But then at the same time, you got all this other stuff, like the third CGI movie and the new other manga. So those are... That's the Resident Evil Heavenly Island manga, which is a sequel to Revelations 2 and is a setup to Resident Evil 7, while also being a tie into Umbrella Corps, Resident Evil Umbrella Corps, which is a canon game, by the way. I don't know. Besides, I mean, the gameplay itself is pretty terrible apparently, but like in terms of story, there's a lot of story details in there that sets a lot of stuff up to come in future games. So that's very important to keep in mind. And then obviously you've got the third CGI movie coming out afterwards, after Resident Evil 7. So Resident Evil 7, then Resident Evil Vendetta. And then I think there's a new stage play coming out as well. I'm not sure if that's been confirmed or not. But yeah, those are, all of those games, films and materials I've mentioned, those are the canon things that are pretty much tied into Resident Evil. So what's not canon? Resident Evil, for example, Resident Evil Survivor, Resident Evil Dead Aim, and Resident Evil Outbreak, and Resident Evil Gaiden. Obviously that was never canon to begin with, I'm just throwing it in there. Those aren't canon games anymore. Wesker's Report number 1 is not canon. In Wesker's Report number 1, it confirmed Leon A and Claire B as the canon scenario in Resident Evil 2, but obviously, unfortunately, after the release of the version of Resident Evil 4 that we ended up getting, any continuation of plot elements suggested in that report were pretty much thrown out of the window. So Wesker's Report number 1 is no longer canon, as is Leon A and Claire B, because the canon scenario is Claire A and Leon B in Resident Evil 2, which Darkside Chronicles and Umbrella Chronicles with its Ada campaign both confirmed. So yeah, that's the canon version. And then of course you have Resident Evil 5, which has this entire history of Resident Evil in its file sections that you can read up on, and it doesn't mention the events of Outbreak or Dead Aim or Survivor. So those games are not canon, unfortunately, and they wouldn't be canon. It wouldn't make sense for it to be canon anyway, because Resident Evil Survivor, even though the events are mentioned in the beginning of Resident Evil Zero's narration, you know, at the time it probably was canon, but not anymore. And the reason for that is because Umbrella Chronicles makes that game non-canon. The reason for that is that Survivor was meant to explain where the tyrants come from. You know, the idea that Umbrella takes children and experiments on them, taking pieces of their brains to create these tyrant monsters. That was the canon version of where the tyrants came from. Umbrella Chronicles, however, introduces the villain Sergei Vladimir, and it's revealed that all the tyrants, technically speaking 10 tyrants, were cloned from him. So all the tyrants you fight in the series all came from him. So that's the canon logical storyline for that. So yeah, Survivor's no longer canon because of that. Resident Evil Dead Aim, I don't think it was ever canon. There was nothing in there really connected to the main plot besides maybe a reference to Africa that was sort of meant to be a setup for Resident Evil 5 in the future. But yeah, that's no longer canon again. And it's funny actually, because like Survivor and Dead Aim were sort of the Resident Evil games that had the first person perspective. Mainly Survivor. Dead Aim had the third person perspective, and then later on it had the first aim when you're going into combat. So that's actually an interesting concept, because they brought that back for Revelations 1 in the 3DS version. But yeah, and it was also set on a cruise ship. So yeah, that's the funny thing. But yeah, that's not canon. Outbreak isn't canon. I don't know why people always presume Outbreak's not canon, because if it was, surely the good endings would be the canon endings, right? And you have witnesses, but no, those characters are never really mentioned or referenced, especially with the cure for the T virus, which you discover in the Outbreak games, but that's not canon, because a cure to the virus wasn't discovered or made until the events of the CGI movie Resident Evil Degeneration. So yeah, not canon. Though Alicia Ashcroft, I think, if that's what her name is referenced as an Easter egg in Resident Evil 7. So that could just be Capcom taking this NPC, you know, character that was a nobody and maybe inserting it into the canon of the Resident Evil storyline universe. So, you know, again, just think of it as an Easter egg. But yeah, Outbreak is not canon as much as you'd like it to be, because none of it really makes sense in terms of the plot and how it goes about. So yeah, that's not canon, that's not canon, that's not. And this, what I've mentioned, the games I've mentioned, those are the canon ones. Anything else in the series? No, that's about it, sadly. Yeah. it's very interesting that you've got all of these games and you've got all these other ones, but like, yeah, they're just spin-offs. They don't do anything for the overall series. They don't add anything or take anything away. But yeah, oh, and obviously if you look at the 20-year anniversary trailer, Capcom has put the actual canon games in order what they are, with the exception of the Chronicle games, because again, hardly anyone really played them. But besides just those 2 main story scenarios that are exclusively in those missions, everything else is just retelling, or very fast retelling of the actual events of the previous classical games. So, but yeah, those are the canon games, that's the etc, etc, and yeah, I hope you liked this video. Tell me your thoughts down below if you want. As always, like and subscribe, whatever, and I shall see you when I shall see you. Take care and bye.